Hello everyone and welcome to the Conqueror guide. Now I wanted to apologize to you guys first because this is a very late upload, and the reason for that is Twitch muted the audio of the stream where we did the Con guide originally, so we have been forced to redo it off stream. Hope that means we can make it a bit shorter, but I mean we'll see about that. Also remember guys that if you're only interested in a certain part of the character, you can always check the description for timestamps, and I always make sure to include these every time. So here with me today to teach us Conqueror is Treejak. Hello Treejak, could you introduce yourself first?
Hello, my name is Treejak, and I am a competitive For Honor player, and I mainly play Conk in tournaments. And today I will be teaching all the basic and advanced parts and features to Conquer.
Alright, sounds great. So let's start with 1v1 and his defense in that mode, as Conk has pretty much always been known as one of the defensive heroes in the game. So what are some of my defensive options as Conqueror?
As Conqueror, you have blocking, but with his blocking, he has a lot more to it. So he has option selects, which option selects with his zone. Since his zone has all guard, it negates all regular attacks, so no unblockables can, as long as it's not unblockable, it can't hit him. Guard break, you cannot guard break him out of it. It does have 100 milliseconds vulnerability at startup, so you have to be careful. But other than that, it's a really strong option select. Another option select of his is the charged heavy option select. With that, all Conk's heavies have 100 milliseconds startup or vulnerability to them.
Yeah, garbage vulnerability.
They're extremely hard to GB on reaction. It's impossible to GB them on reaction and catch them.
Yeah, heavy feint into Garbage doesn't even work against Conqueror most of the time, because he can just let the heavy go and the heavy feint into Garbage will just bounce up and Conqueror will get the damage.
Yes. So the strength of the charged heavy is you parry on light timing, but instead of just letting it go, you hold it. So if they don't throw a light and they throw the heavy, you start charging. And since you maintain block while you're charging your heavy, even if they let the heavy go, you can still block it. But if they feint into guard break, you can see that and you can react to it, and you can let go of your heavy. And since it has very low GB vulnerability, their GB will bounce off and they will be punished for it.
Alright, so those are two of my options defensively. There's the option select, this one, the charge heavy, and there's the zone option select. What are some of my other defensive options as Conqueror?
Your other options are you can all guard, which when hit with any attack at all, you get a free 30 damage heavy.
Right.
It's unblockable and it will always land as long as there's no obstruction. So if there's a wall between you, it'll hit the wall. But the thing is, if there's someone standing in front of them, they will eat the attack for them. So it doesn't go straight to them. This applies to minions as well. If you all guard a attack in the minions and a minion standing right in front of them, the minion will eat the attack instead.
Okay.
So you have to be careful about that.
Okay.
With the all guard, it does have GB vulnerability. You can't GB or counter guard break out of it. So you have to be careful on that.
Yeah.
The thing with that is that you can zone out of all guard. So that can help with reading guard breaks. So that gives you a little bit more defensive capabilities.
Yeah, but you do have to be careful because of course both the all guard and the zone are very slow. So it is not safe, but especially in 1v1, but it is something that you can do. And the zone is very useful, for example, against like 400 MS follow-ups, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so against like some cards like Orochi or Zerker, you might want to use it a little bit more. Of course, don't be too cocky with it, let's say. Just like you sometimes have to like maybe back that, maybe try and go for a normal parry, use your other option selects.
I would like to mention with the charged heavy, normally you have 100 milliseconds between each guard switch, but when you're charging your heavy, your guard switches are 300.
So you don't really want to use it, right, in 1v1 then?
You don't want to really use it. You don't want to just stand here and charge it, because if they have a 500 light, and you can't react and block.
So is there anything else defensively except for all guard and the other option selects we talked about?
He does have superior block on his dodges, so whichever way he dodges, his guard automatically goes to whichever direction. And when he does that, he gains superior block.
All right.
So he can technically deflect attacks, but they're not like assassins. You just block them, and if you do block them in the dodge, you get a free bash on them.
All right. So let's show that. There we go. That's exactly how it works. So it works on all heavies, on all lights, and things like that, right?
Yes.
So it's just like a better dodge, pretty much.
It's a better dodge.
Okay. Now there's one more tool of Conqueror that we want to talk about here as well. The side bash as well, which is very, very strong defensively, right?
Yes, the side bash is strong defensively because its bash has 100 MS vulnerability. So, say they're trying to mix you up, like I can say he's trying to pommel you. If you dodge on the heavy and they cancel into a GB, the bash will beat the GB.
It's not good. It's not good offensively because it only comes up very late into the dash, but for defense, it's one of the best side bashes in the game, if not the best, just because of how many things it can punish.
It can punish everything in like all bashes in the game. It can punish.
Yeah. On
reaction, so that's extremely strong.
Yeah, Kong is like one of the 2 characters who can punish Shinobi Kick on reaction as well, right?
Yes.
Because of that. Yeah, so it's an extremely strong tool that you have to use, or that you should use. Should I ever use the forward bash defensively?
The forward bash is more of an offensive tool instead of defensive, because he's mainly put around his forward dash.
Okay. Now that you said that it's more of an offensive tool, let's move on to his offensive tools. Now, of course, the big one is the forward bash, because it can be done very early into the animation of the dash, or it can be done very late. Now, can you talk to us about the different timings and basically how to use the shield bash, first of all?
So with the timings in the bash, the earliest in the dodge in the bash you can do it is 100 MS. The latest you can do it is 400 MS. And even though you have that 100 to 400 MS variable bash timings, there's only 2 real timings to the bash. There's the instant bash, so buffering it, and the max delayed bash. And the reason why I say there's only 2 true timings is if someone is dodging on the instant bash timing, it beats all timings from instant bash all the way up to, say, 300 milliseconds into the dodge. And it also beats dodge GB.
Yeah. Because they dodge so early that they can still counter guard break because of how slow the forward dodge the recovery is of Conqueror, right?
Yes.
Okay, so basically we have 2 timings. We have this one, which is instant, and we have this one, which is fully delayed. So when should I use which one, and basically what's the differences between them?
When you should do them is you should always do them. Don't just instant bash over and over and over, because it will start to be dodged, and you'll start to be punished. Even though Conk's forward bash is strong, it can be punished very easily just by being dodged. Any character with a dodge attack can punish it. So about 90% of the characters in the game can punish it.
Yeah, and the characters that don't have a dash attack can still dodge in on prediction and get a guard break. So
yes,
it is not safe at all, so you have to be careful with how you use it. And especially since there are only 2 timings, you have to be careful with how you juggle them. But of course you can do like an empty dash as well, right, to see what the opponent's thinking, what he might react with, right, and things like that. So there's a lot of mix-ups to it. It's just that there are only 2 shield bash timings, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now that we talked about the shield bash as an offensive tool, okay, so it is a very good interruption tool as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, anytime you think they might be doing something, you can also forward dash shield bash, which is a pretty strong way of interrupting someone. Now, what about his other tools in the kit? So we already kind of talked about the charge heavy, how you shouldn't be using it. We already talked about all the defensive options, but now what about his offensive options outside of the shield bash?
Outside the shield bash, he has an infinite light chain, an infinite heavy chain, and the thing with these chains is you can mix in a light and a heavy whenever you want into the chain. And you can keep going until you run out of stam. So his starter lights, so his neutral lights, they're good, and then they're bad. The reason why they're good is because his top one is 500, which is a decently fast light. But his side ones are 600, which are extremely slow for being lights.
Yeah, you can even see the animation, how slow it is. So basically, don't use the side lights ever.
Don't use them.
Yeah, only use the top lights. You can only, well, you can use the side lights in chain, because in chain there are 500 ms, right?
Yes, all his lights are 500 in chain, except if you do them on the same side.
Yeah, you have to always. Yeah, you have to always do them on a different side, because as I'm showing here, these are lights. These are not quick.
The same side light is 900 ms.
Yeah, so never use the same side light. It is slower than a heavy, and you don't want to ever use it. Make sure to always mix up your sides with the lights. The lights are pretty good in terms of speed, but they're not very good in terms of tracking, because as long as someone's walking backwards, they can just make your lights whiff. Especially if the Conqueror is delaying them as much as possible. If they're not delaying them, like if the Conqueror is buffering the lights, they cannot just walk backwards, but then those are very slow. 500 ms actually 500 rather than the 433. So because of that, it is very difficult to hit many people with it if they know about it. But you can still always, every now and then go for it. Like make sure you delay it as much as possible, and go for the light.
He has a mechanic on his lights that if he does a whiff, he gains his old superior block. So if you block a heavy, you get a free GB.
Yeah, it's not a big thing, but it is something that it gives you a little bit more safety if you do with that light. Okay, so those are the chain lights, and the chain heavies, of course. Again, we can throw any of these in any kind of order you want. So, is there anything else about Conqueror's offense that you want to talk about, or is that it?
That's mainly it.
So I wanted to ask you about the different parts of his skill, like this heavy feint or a heavy soft feint into shoulder bash, or I guess into shield bash, I guess it is. Then also this one that you can do.
Okay, so we have the shield uppercut, which is the soft feint from heavy. It's a decent move, but it uses extreme stamina. And the only real reason to use it is if you've been chaining lights over and over on an opponent, and they finally want to parry one, and you throw a heavy. If they try to parry the light that they think's coming out, if they try to parry it at all, they will be hit by the bash. But you only gain a light off the bash for almost half your stam.
Yeah, it doesn't wasp blood either. There's no possibility of more damage. It is the 13 damage light, that's all you get. But it does make it so that it's a little bit less safe to parry Conqueror heavies, which is nice.
Yes.
Now there's also this one which you can do in chain. It wasp bloods, but you don't really want to ever use it, right?
It can only be done after light or a heavy have been blocked or hit. But it's so slow, it doesn't really matter which it comes after.
Yeah, it does have a good range, but it's never gonna hit. And if they have a dash attack, they're always gonna be able to punish it as well. So it's not the best move, but I mean, if the guy's not dodging it, you can use it. But generally speaking, if you're playing as someone who knows what they're doing, you're not going to be able to use this very well. Meanwhile, the lights, the chain lights, obviously the shield bash, and things like that, you are going to be able to use them regardless of your opponent's level. So we encourage you to use those, but it is also important to talk about the applications for maybe some less known or less usually used moves. Alright, so that's about it for Conqueror offense. We talked about his defense earlier as well, all the option selects. Now about his offense, we talked about the chain lights, the shield bash, which is very important, the most important part of his moveset, and we talked about the less usually explored, let's say, less common parts of his moveset that you don't really want to be using too much, but there are some uses to some of them. So now let's move on to matchups. Alright, so the first matchup we will be talking about is Highlander. Now, Treejak, why is Highlander an important matchup for Conqueror?
For Highlander versus Conk, the main problem with the matchup for Conk is Highlander's offensive stance and his dodge recovery. Since he has 400 milliseconds dodge recovery, and this basically gives him a 40 damage dodge attack. And to put in perspective, the second highest dodge attack basically is 20 to 25.
Yeah.
So he's getting 20 to 15 more damage than anybody else. It makes Conk a lot more cautious to bash him, because if he does dodge a bash, he's eating 40 damage. And if Conk does hit him with a bash, he only gets 13. So you basically have to hit him with 3 or more bashes to keep up with the damage of him dodging one thing. And the problem with him being in offensive stance, other than the dodge attacks, is Conk can't really touch him either, because Highlander can dodge on lights and dodge and offensive items. So Conk can't really do anything to him since he has no arcing attacks or big hitbox.
Alright, so let's show the shield bash. So just try the shield bash, man. Yeah, that's guaranteed. Now show the lights and heavies, maybe. Yeah, it doesn't matter when I dodge them, as long as I dodge them on indicator, I can just dodge and get my 10 damage with the offensive light. It's not an unwinnable matchup as Conqueror, right? So what are some of the things that as Conqueror I would like to do?
The best way is to keep Highlander out of offensive stance, but that's incredibly hard because Highlander can backlight and go straight into it. And unless Highlander does it from top, Conk can't do anything about it. And even if he does it from top, if he's not in range for the forward bash, he still can't do anything about it. So you want to corner him as best as you can, because that's the only way you're going to keep him from going into offensive stance. With an arena like this, you're not going to corner him, so you're going to have to do your best to deal with him in offensive stance. With Conqueror, though, and with a few other characters, his walking speed is just fast enough to where he can walk backwards while he's in his offensive stance, and the kick will always whiff. As long as you keep proper spacing and you don't run into a wall or something, the kick will always whiff.
I feel like I'm literally next to you and it's whiffing. So Conqueror is one of those characters that can move backwards against the kick, so anytime you're out of stamina, for example, as Conqueror, you're a lot safer than some other characters. Or in general, against his offense, you're gonna be a lot safer than some other characters. Also, of course, you have the side dash bash, so if you do dodge like an offensive light or something like that, you can get a side bash attack, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so there are some things you can do, but you have to be extremely patient as Conqueror. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to be extremely patient because you eat a light and 3 heavies and you die. It takes a lot longer for you to kill Highlander as Conk, but it only takes 3 mistakes for you to die.
But it is winnable.
It is winnable. It's just extremely hard, and especially against a good Highlander.
Alright, so the next matchup we want to talk about is Warden against Conqueror. Now, as Conqueror, what are some of the things that you should be careful of, and what are some of the things that you can do against Warden?
So, mainly, your biggest issue with Warden is his bash, and the way he can charge it and start moving and feint it, because as Conqueror, you want to dodge and then bash his own dot or his own bash. The thing with that is, if they charge it and start moving, you pretty much have to do it on a read. And if you do read wrong, he's going to feint it and dodge it, and then bash you. So, mainly you want to be extremely careful, because even though it's not like a Highlander matchup where you're going to eat 40 damage, you're going to eat 20 damage, and it's also extremely hard to deal with the Warden, because unlike Warden, Conk can't feint his bash at all. So once he does a bash, he has to commit to it. So he could eat 30 to 20 damage, depending on how bad he messes up. One thing with the Warden matchup is if they keep mixing it up, you can read if they start to full charge it, and you can forward bash them out of it for a free light.
Yeah, you can do that against any level of shoulder bash that is not level 1. So level 1 will not lose to a shield bash, sorry, but it will beat the shield bash, but level 2 and level 3 will lose to the shield bash. So just kind of a mix-up that you have there as a Conk player. So of course be careful with it, because of course he can go for a level 1, and of course he can start and just dodge immediately on read, but he cannot do it on reaction. So again, it's going to be reads from both sides. But if you stay close to him and if you don't let him be at a range, which is where he wants to be, generally speaking, to kind of mix you up and be safe while doing so, you can do fine as Conk, especially again with those reads and with all the other things that Sebmix and I talked about in the how to counter Warden video. Yeah, it is a winnable matchup. There are just some things that are quite annoying as a Conk player, but he does have some of his own tools to deal with Warden as well. Alright, so the last matchup we want to talk about today is Glad against Conqueror. Now, before we start, we are not talking about all the matchups for Conqueror in the game, of course. That would be, you know, a way too long of a video, but we do want to mention some of the different matchups, basically. So, in all the other matchups, you can assume that, of course, there's small things for any matchup. There's small things, but it's going to be largely the same kind of playstyle where you want to be defensive with your option selects, and then every now and then do your shield bash, maybe do like a light chain or something like that. It's going to be very similar against most heroes, but against these types of heroes that we're talking about today, which is Warden and Glad, and we talked about Highlander as well, there's going to be some differences. And now with a Gladiator, what's the big thing with Gladiator and matchup?
With the Gladiator matchup, it's all about his zone, because Conk can punish his zone, but then he can't. So basically, it's if you dodge his zone, it's basically a 50-50. Because if you dodge it and you bash, if he lets it go, it will hit you. But if you dodge it and don't bash, you can parry it. But say he thinks you're gonna bash him, or you're gonna parry the zone instead of bash him. If he feints it, you get a free GB. Or you can bash him instead.
Yep. So basically, if I let it go, he can parry it, but he cannot bash. While if I don't let it go, he can obviously cannot parry it, but he can bash me. So it's a you know, pretty much a 50-50. It's a mix-up. So because of that, it can be quite a difficult matchup, especially at a lower level or on console, where it's going to be a lot more difficult to dodge Glad. At the same time, if you're having difficulties dodging his Glad zone, though, he's probably going to have difficulties dodging your shield bash and blocking your lights and things like that, parrying your heavies. So you can deal with that, at a player at that level, you can deal with your own offense as well. So what are some of the other things in Glad matchup?
If the Gladiator reads, you are going to try to bash him or for dodge GB. He can on read toast tap, and it'll beat the bash and GB.
So basically, the Gladiator can react to you doing a forward dash and get a toast up or a zone in if you do a guard break, or if you do an empty dash, of course, or also if you do a very late shield bash. Now, of course, he cannot do it on a reaction to you forward dashing and then doing an instant bash, but that's just a mix-ups. So basically, you have to be careful every time with your empty dashes, or with your dashes forward in general, because he can go for a zone or a toast up to punish that on read. So that's about it for the Glad matchup. Again, just to reiterate, this is not all matchups, obviously. Like, there's going to be some differences in certain matchups. Yeah, for example, against Orochi, Conqueror can't really use his shield bash very well, at least against a good Orochi, because Orochi can dodge on a forward dodge and then react to a shoulder bash with his dash light because of how wide the input window is. But generally speaking, for most characters, it's going to be a very similar playstyle as just the general one that we talked about. Because of that, we only showed 3 matchups that are specifically different. Alright, so now we can move on to punishes. Alright, so talk to me about Conqueror punishes. Now, of course, before we start, I wanted to show just the wall splat, which is if you get a guard break near a wall, you can get top heavy. Yep, so at max range you can also get a max throw range, you can also get a charge heavy, which is 44 damage. And on a normal wall splat you're gonna get a top heavy, which is 33. Now, those are the basic punishes. Now, what about some other punishes, like for example out of stamina and things like that?
Without a wall, it's fairly simple. You just throw and charge top heavy.
You just have to walk a little bit forward and you can get it.
Yes. Now, with his out of stam throw with a wall, he has 2 different punishes depending on how they're positioned. If they're positioned next to the wall, you can just side throw into side heavy, and it doesn't matter which heavy you do next because it's 30 damage no matter what.
Yeah,
The second one,
but the first one has to be a side heavy.
yes, the first one has to be a side one. With the second one, their back has to be up against the wall, and you forward throw into top heavy into another heavy. But as I understand parry, it's side heavy, top heavy, side heavy, heavy. It does not matter.
Yeah, so it's heavy. Okay. What about his revenge parry?
Revenge is if you knock them down off the revenge pop, it's just heavy.
Just charge heavy, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just the same as that. Okay. So I think that's about it for punishers. For some characters, we spend like 5 to 10 minutes here, but for Kong, just like a few simple punishers, and that's all you have to know. Alright, so now feats. Now, before we start, I want to let you guys know that in Marching Fire, there will be a few changes to some of Conqueror's feats. We will talk about them. If you're wondering what the other changes will be in Marching Fire to the feats, there will leave a link down in the description. And we will be talking about Conqueror in Dominion right now, and then we will be talking about Conqueror feats in Breach / Dominion in Marching Fire. So, talk to me, Treejak, about Conqueror feats right now.
Right now, and the main thing you want to run in Dominion is Body Count, Shield Basher, Heal on Block, and Catapult.
Okay.
Now, the reasoning for Body Count is Conk is one of the best mid clears and is the safest mid clear in the game at the moment. He can just sit in mid all he wants and clear. And having Body Count allows him to sustain and stay in mid for even longer. For Shield Basher, that's where his primary damage comes from. So that actually allows his bash to do 10 damage. So bashes will do 23 damage.
Yeah, with a confirmed light afterwards. Yep.
Heal on Block. Heal on Block is actually really strong right now because even though it does heal off enemy attacks, it heals off minion attacks as well. That gives him another huge sustain in mid because each minion hit that's blocked gives you 5 health. With Catapult, it's Catapult. It can one-shot an entire team if you use it correctly.
Okay. So now let me talk about the Marching Fire nerfs. So Shield Basher in Marching Fire will, instead of dealing 10 damage, it will only deal 6. This matters because it makes his right now 23 damage Shield Bash 19. Now the next one is Pugna Mortis. It's being nerfed. There will be a lot lower damage and the radius of it will be lower as well. Now this doesn't matter as much for Conqueror because he doesn't run Pugna Mortis anyway. Just like for example Lawbringer, they don't really run Pugna Mortis anyway. So it's not the biggest deal, but Heal on Block you still run. And then Catapult is going to be absolutely terrible in Marching Fire. It's going to be like 3 or 4 seconds startup time now, so we can easily walk out of it on reaction. So then what would you run as feats for Breach or just in general for Conqueror in Season 8?
For feats in Breach, I would either take Body Count or Quick Revive. Both of those will be very good, especially since the minions do more damage, and Conk can not be damaged by the minions while he clears because of his all guard on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Shield Basher won't change because that's still his primary damage.
Yeah.
Heal on Block will stay.
Yeah,
with Catapult, you will switch that out for Regenerate.
Mm-hmm.
Since that's the only viable option left.
Yeah, you're going to have all passive feats. Regenerate is going to be nice in Breach because of how important healing is in that mode, and with the only healing point being, well, the healing point, it's going to be extremely important to be able to heal outside of that. So that's why Second Wind or Jungjun's tier 3 feat are very, very strong in Breach, and Regenerate might be very strong in Breach as well, just like it was in Tribute when that was played. Alright, so now for V4. What's the general playstyle I would like to use in 4v4 as Conqueror?
For the general playstyle is you're a mid character, so you want to be in mid as much as possible, since, like I said before, he's one of the best mid clears and he's the safest mid clear.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he's the safest mid clear is since he gains all block on his zone, he can turn around and unlock and zone on minions, which makes it where his zone cannot be parried by enemy. And since he has the all block, normal attacks won't face him. And a majority of the time, many bashes will be will get knocked out. So he's safe from those.
Okay. So just to reiterate, if you unlock a zone in minions and you're unlocked, right? You're unlocked, you're not looking at anybody, and you're in minions, that zone cannot be parried. Which, as Treejak said with Conqueror, matters even more because he can. First of all, he has heal on block, and second of all, he has body count, and third of all, he has all guard on his zone. All of these are very important here, and all of these help him survive in mid a lot longer than he would be able to without them. Right, so basically I want to stay in mid. Now what are some of the other things that I would want to be doing, or is that all?
That's the main thing that as Conk you want to be doing in the minion, because once you get body count, you become a lot harder to get out of mid, but once you get heal on block, you become basically impossible to be taken out of mid as long as you have minions coming at you. So that forces the enemy team to send 2 to 3 people just to deal with one person, which allows for your team to take the map and gain an advantage while they deal with you in mid.
Alright, so basically you're trying to be as annoying in mid as possible while keeping it for your team the entire game.
Yes, basically. You're basically anchoring mid and keeping it the entire game, or as long as possible, until you're killed or you're forced out.
Alright. So that's pretty simple. Do I want to ever go help my team, or do I just only want to stay in mid?
It's mainly situational, because if your team's having like 3v2 on the enemy's home point, you don't want to go up there and make it a 4v2. There's no point in that. If they're having a 2v2, there's no point in you going up there either, because even though your feats are strong, you still give a lot of revenge with your bashes. So you want to stop revenge gain as much as possible. The only real part, or only situations you want to go, is when your team actually needs you, when they start losing a fight and the other team is really low. So giving them revenge won't really matter, because they'll die after their revenge runs out. Other than that, you want to stay in mid, because say if there's a lawbringer on the other team, you don't want to leave him in mid just to farm, because then he will get bombs, and bombs aren't good for late game team fights because they can win a game really easy.
Alright, so basically mid unless there's a big reason for me not to be mid. Okay. Now, when it comes to the team fights that, you know, if I'm in mid, I must sometimes be in team fights, because sometimes, for example, on Gate, where we are right now, big team fights tend to happen in mid. So then, if I'm there, what do I want to be doing in team fights as Conqueror?
In team fights, if you're in the middle and one of the minions have pushed to the side, you want to move over to the minions, because even though it's a team fight, you don't want to waste valuable minions. So you want to either take back the point if they've pushed it, or do you want to keep your point while you fight. So if you're close enough to the minions, you run over there and you just start clearing minions. If you're not near minions at all, the best option is to find the most wide-arcing character, say like Nabushi or Kensei, and you want to stand right next to them. And if you're in a safe spot next to a teammate, you sit next to them in all guard. So if they try to zone or do any wide-arcing attack, they're going to be punished for it. And that way you can shut them down in the team fight.
Okay, so I don't want to bash too much, right, in a team fight, but obviously that's gonna give revenge. So I want to be careful with my bashes. I want to basically be using my zone option select, right? As well, that's very strong. Because you can just lock onto someone else who's not looking at you, and because of that, everyone else cannot parry it. You're just sitting there zoning, and the only thing they can really do is maybe throw a bash, if they time it correctly, or throw an unblockable with hyper armor like Zerker. But aside from that, they can't really do much else. And so you're safe like that. All while you're maybe getting revenge, maybe you're healing if there's minions around, so that's very important to know. And aside from that, yeah, as Treejak said, the all guard is going to be extremely strong as well. But aside from that, just kind of sit and wait to maybe be able to punish someone with your all guard or with your zone. If someone's trying to mix you up, just lock onto someone else and just zone. and there isn't much that most characters can do, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In team fights, though, if you do bash, you are very easily punished because you have high recoveries after you bash on light. And the way to counter or help this is you can bash this conk and you can go straight into all guard.
Yep.
And if there's like a Nobushi or a Kensei watching you, waiting for you to bash, and as soon as they see you bash, they try to Cobra or zone you, they'll hit your all guard and they'll be punished instead.
Okay, so that's only if I hit the shield bash. I cannot do it if I whiff it, right?
If you whiff it, you have a huge recovery after it, where you cannot block, or do any other action.
Look at how much longer it takes. So that's really good if I want to, for example, just take someone out of the fight for a second with a bash and then just be safe while doing so. Or maybe in a ganking situation, or maybe in a 1vx situation as well, right? If I bash someone, it's a 1v2, and I don't want to immediately die to the other person, well, I can go into full guard and be safe, or mostly safe. Of course, they can still guard break me, but most people will not be doing that. Most people will try and punish you for attacking, and that way you can, in a ganking situation, you can always stay a little bit more safe, right?
Yes.
Right, so moving on to 1vx situations, 1v2, 1v3, 1v4. What are some of the things, except for what we just said with the all guard, shield bash into all guard, what are some of the things I can do in those situations?
The main thing you want to do is, if you aren't forced to bash, don't bash and try to block and dodge the most things as possible. It does depend on who the characters who are yanking you are. So, say an unwinnable situation would be a Nobushi shaman. You're gonna die there.
Yep.
That's unless they mess it up really badly. But if they do it decently at all, you're going to die. But if a Kensei and Nobushi are trying to yank you, they can't really do much by themselves besides GB for Cobra Strike. And that can be countered by a zoning on read to the Kensei's GB. Or if one of them gets a little bit too far, you can just lock onto one of them and zone. So you can't be hit.
Yep. Alright. So basically you want to be using your zone and sometimes the shield bash, but don't use it too much because obviously you can be punished for it. The zone is going to be very, very good, especially if there's, like, for example, 3 people and maybe they don't know who you're locked onto or something like that. Well, then just lock onto the one who's the furthest away, for example, and just zone, and most of the time you're going to be safe. Now, of course, this doesn't win 1v2s or 1v3s, but it does stall them, right? Which is already good enough. Conqueror doesn't have very high damage. He has really good sustainability, he has very good control over a midpoint, for example, but he doesn't have very huge damage, right? So you will not be winning the fight, even in matchmaking, most likely not going to be winning too many of these fights, just because you don't have many, you don't have a lot of damage and you don't have many AoE attacks, but you do have the zone, which gives you a lot of safety, and you do have your feats, which, for example, with heal on block, when matchmaking, people are going to be hitting into that, which gives you just free health, as long as you know how to block, and as long as you know how to use your all guard or maybe your zone, you're going to be most likely fine in a lot of situations when you're getting ganked. Again, that's speaking from a perspective in matchmaking. At the highest level, you would be getting ganked by characters that can just kill you almost instantly. But in matchmaking, just for solo queue purposes or just for lower level matches, you're going to be able to stall very, very, very well as Conqueror, right?
Yes. When you're being ganked, your main priority is to stall as much as possible. And while you stall, you try to do some damage, but don't try to straight out win it. If you can win it, but don't force yourself to win. If you know you can't or you don't have confidence in winning it, just play it safe and wait for your team, but try to whittle down the enemy a little bit more. Another option that Conk does have in like 1v2 situations or 1v3s is that if you do happen to get a guard break, he has a couple of options off guard break to keep him safe. So one of his options is when he guard breaks, he can zone off guard break. And if you stay locked onto the person you guard break, he can't parry that. So you're safe with that.
Okay.
So if he try to punish you for the guard break, you can do that. Another option is, since you have superior block on your heavies, on your starter heavies, you can try to time the heavy to block incoming attacks, so you still get the punish on the person, but you're safe.
So for example, I got breaker right now, and there's someone on my left. I can time my heavy correctly, and I can block their attempt at punishing me, while at the same time getting the 25 or so damage that I get from a guard break.
Yes.
Okay.
He also has two more options, which he can actually go into all guard pretty much instantly after getting a guard break. So he can go straight into all guard, and it pushes the person he has guard break back. But if someone tries to punish him, he can punish them back.
And this is alright, and this is not done by just all guarding. You have to kind of heavy feint into it.
You have to basically hold heavy and go straight into all guard as soon as you do it.
Yep, as you're seeing on the input right now on the screen. Alright. And the other option?
His other option is he can actually parry off guard breaks.
Oh, really?
So the way you do this is you guard break and you start charging your heavy, but you cancel it. You don't feint it with your all guard. You press your feint button, and that will go straight in. It'll keep them in their guard break situation, but it'll bring back your normal guard. So you can block, or if it like an unblockable comes out, you can parry it.
Okay. So that's gonna be like a nice little thing that you can do. I would say probably the safest way would still be to just get the guard break and zone, because then everyone who's around you is going to not be able to do anything. But there might be like an unblockable coming, or like a bash coming that you cannot beat out with your zone, so then of course you can do that. Which is, again, you get a guard break and you just again, you get the guard break and you just cancel your charge with the feint button, which is something we already talked about earlier on, so you should know how to do it. And yeah, alright, so those are some nice cool things you can do, generally in team fights, but also of course in 1vx situations, and to keep you a little bit more safe and maybe allow you to stall a little bit more.
The last thing I want to talk about is if you have your second feat, Shield Basher, when you guard break and you don't have a wall near you, normally you only get 25 damage off a regular heavy. But if you have your feat, you can guard break, side throw, forward bash, and light. So that'll give you 33 damage instead of 25. So say they're 28 health and you've been fighting a little bit, or you're not confident you can kill them in time that one of their teammates come. If you just do a heavy, you can do that and you can immediately kill them.
Yeah, there we go. So that's how we do it. So you have to side throw them and then just do it immediately. That's 33 damage right now. After the Marching Fire nerfs, it's going to be 29 damage, but it's still 4 damage more. So as of right now, it's 8 damage more, which is a lot of damage. 4 damage may not seem like a lot, but if they're just above 25 HP, you might want to try doing this, just so you're sure that you kill them. Also worth to mention that if you have Shield Basher, your throws in general of course deal damage. So if you throw them into a wall, for the usual 33 damage from a top heavy, or 44 if you have perfect spacing, you're going to be able to get 10 more damage, or after Marching Fire nerfs 6 more damage from your guard break as well. Always, if you have Shield Basher, make sure to look out for the walls, know your throw range. If you know it perfectly, you're going to be able to get a lot more damage out of your Conqueror. So that's it for the Conqueror guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too long. And thank you, Treejak, for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so see you guys next time and hope you liked it.